Hi, subscribe to Life Stories so you don't miss new stories. For several months, it was just my daughter and me. Every evening, I'd pop in to wish her and her cat a good night. The cat had a habit of snuggling with her in bed, sometimes curled up at her feet, other times nestled close by. She was so content with having a pet that it almost made up for missing her mom. Yet, occasionally, she'd still ask when her mom would return and why she hadn't even called. I tried to give ambiguous answers or pretended to be occupied, saying I'd explain later. I knew I'd have to tell her the whole truth eventually. But for now, I couldn't find the right words, especially after seeing Julia on TV, witnessing how low she had sunk. I even contemplated seeing a therapist to figure out how to gently convey the awful truth to my child. One evening, I was in the living room flipping through newspapers when my phone rang. I thought it might be work-related even at such a late hour. But when I checked, it was Julia. I was surprised because, in all that time since she left home, she hadn't reached out once, never inquired about our daughter's well-being. Curiosity got the better of me, and my finger involuntarily pressed the green button. I answered, "What do you want?" I asked in a slightly rough but hushed tone. "Bruce, help me. I'm in trouble," she mumbled as I suspected not sober. "What?" I chuckled. "And you're asking me? After everything? How come you haven't deleted my number?" "Bruce, I'm serious. I've been arrested again and... Can you come get me?" I shut up a little into the tube, trying to determine if I was dreaming. But on the other hand, I realized that Julia had probably reached the point where she had no one to turn to. And I even wanted to hang up the phone so she could sit in the monkey house for as long as it took and realize something about her life. But she was still the mother of my child, and that fact did not allow me as a man to just leave her in trouble. "Which precinct are you in?" I asked. Once she answered, I went to my daughter, told her I needed to leave for a while, reminded her how to behave while I was away. I kissed my daughter on the forehead, scratched the cat behind the ear, and headed to the police station, at least to find out what had happened to Julia. An officer escorted me to the holding area where Julia was, and when she saw me, she jumped up and clung to the bars. I looked at her, and I couldn't believe that I had once lived with this woman who now looked more like a shabby cat than a businesswoman. "Bruce, sweetheart, get me out," she pleaded. "Please," she whimpered. "Why? You fit in quite well here, and the company suits you." I even laughed. But she kept looking at me so plaintively, and then I nodded at the officer to unlock the steel door. Before I approached her, I gathered all the details from the desk officer and posted bail for her, though doubt still plagued me about whether it was the right thing to do. But I was already there and chose to act nobly. Julia stepped out of the cell and rushed to hug me, but I immediately pushed her away. Not only because I still remembered her betrayal, but also because an unpleasant odor emanated from her. As she exited, she waved to the police officer like a highway prostitute and followed me. "Well, are you satisfied? But don't bother me in such cases anymore. This is the first and last time I've come for you. You're free. Go to your pimp," I said dryly. "But Bruce, you can't just leave me like this. I don't have anyone. I've never dated anyone else. At least not seriously." She continued following me to the car. "I don't care. You're not a part of my life anymore." "Not mine, not Kelly's." I stared at her reproachfully. "Kelly? Oh, how is she? Oh, now you remember Kelly? In all these months, you never called once, never asked about her, and suddenly now you remember." I turned away and stood like that for a while, then turned back to her. "You know what? Forget it. Forget us altogether, and don't show up again." "But Bruce, I'm in such a situation now. I have nothing and no one. I don't even have money for rent. Please don't abandon me. Where will I go? I'm left with nothing but the streets to live on now. I even lost my job. And who's to blame for that?" I stared at her accusingly. Julia guiltily lowered her gaze. She looked so pitiful that I didn't even feel like slapping her, something she truly deserved. Instead, I started to feel sorry for her. Besides, I couldn't just take a mother away from her daughter. After all, she would grow up and eventually find out. Listening to her, I noticed she was speaking quite earnestly, but I couldn't just take her home, at least not in that condition. I don't know what prompted me then to put her in my car, and we drove to the motel. First of all, I made her wash up, and then I organized dinner. During our conversation, she kept crying about how miserable her fate had become. She told me that after the day we parted ways, she only saw Stek once, then found out he had left for another job. Left for another country. She tried to work for a while, but every evening she drank because of what she had to endure that night when I recorded the humiliating video. And then she started drinking even during the workday. Julia did not miss the story of how she met a guy with whom she rented an apartment. But things did not work out with him either. And it all ended with her new boss giving her an ultimatum, either work or alcohol. Julia promised twice to take care of herself, but on the third time, she couldn't handle it, and was forced to sign a letter of resignation. This loss of work and her neglect of household chores such as cooking and cleaning led to the breakdown of her relationship with her boyfriend. Now she was left alone without a job and her life was spiraling downward. In the few hours I spent with her, she begged to come back multiple times. She swore she would change and even agreed to seek treatment for alcoholism. I wasn't sure if I should believe her, but I decided to give her a second chance. However, I didn't immediately take her home. I left her in the room and told her that if she truly wanted to return to her family, she couldn't drink anymore. I said I would come in the morning and take her to a center where she could start her treatment. When I returned home, I realized I had spent quite a lot of time with Julia. By the time I got back, my daughter was already getting ready for bed. I went to her room to check on her. "Not asleep yet, sweetheart?" I asked, sitting on the bed. "Almost asleep. Where were you?" "Oh, just had to go somewhere." "Did you have dinner?" "Yes." "Will you read to me?" "Of course. Which fairy tale do you want to hear tonight?" Kelly expressed her desire to hear the story about the little ducks who lived on a large farm and befriended other animals, learning from them knowledge and experience. Julia used to read this story to her sometimes at night. Now with Julia gone, my daughter frequently asked for this tale almost every night recently. I increasingly realized that Kelly missed her mom a lot, although she didn't express it verbally. The next day, after dropping her off at school, I intended to head to the motel where I left Julia. On the way, the car's sensor beeped, indicating low fuel. Turning left at a certain spot, I pulled into a gas station. I had to wait a bit as there were 2 cars ahead of me. I dialed the number of a good acquaintance of mine who rented out houses. This thought came to me when I noticed a billboard across the gas station. I thought it would be better to accommodate Julia somewhere nearby for now, rather than immediately bringing her home, since I wasn't entirely sure she was truly ready to change and act like a responsible mother. But Stan didn't answer, and instead I heard his voicemail. Voicemail signal. I decided against leaving a message, especially as it was my turn to refuel the car. Maybe this was some kind of sign, I thought, deciding I'd deal with this matter later. Returning to the motel, I approached the room where I had left Julia the day before, and noticed the door slightly ajar. Without knocking, I gently pushed the door and it silently opened. Julia lay on her side on the bed, with one arm under her head, seemingly asleep. Approaching closer, I sat beside her, scanning the room for signs of alcohol consumption, but found nothing besides a pack of juice on the nightstand. As soon as I sat down, Julia abruptly opened her eyes and raised her head. "Oh, you're here already?" she asked in a drowsy voice. "I thought you were asleep." "No, just resting. Couldn't sleep for a while at night and then had all sorts of nonsense dreams." "And you?" While she spoke, I observed her and noticed she wasn't drunk, but her appearance suggested hope for the better. "Get ready." "Where? Are we going home?" There was a hint of joy in her voice. "No, first to the clinic. Do you think I'd allow my daughter to see you in this state?" "And what?" She smoothed her hair, adjusting the disheveled locks slightly. "Do I look that bad?" I looked at her critically, making it clear that I was not going to back down from my decision, and soon I took her to the clinic. There, she was examined by a doctor. I also wanted to make sure that she hadn't contracted some disease from her absurd lifestyle, and I even paid the doctor a little extra to give me more information. While she was undergoing examination, I went to work, grabbed some papers and discs to work so you can work from home, and then returned to the hospital. I hoped there would be some results by that time. Talking to the doctor before entering her room, I learned that despite my wife's body being saturated with alcohol, her health condition was quite acceptable, and there was no need for concern. He also said I could take her, but prescribed some medications to help eliminate toxins from her body. Then I went to see her. Over these few hours, Julia's appearance had slightly improved. But I shared with her my plan to accommodate her in a separate house for now. But I was hoping I could come back home, she said sadly. Bruce, honestly, I missed Kelly so much. I really want to see her again, to hug her. And that's why you didn't call even once, to check on her. I just didn't want... You know yourself how I was living. I just didn't want her to see me like that. But I'll change, I swear. I remained silent for a while, contemplating whether I should trust her. Then, considering the fact that I couldn't reach Stan, which felt like a sign, I decided to take the risk and bring her home. Later, I talked to her and set some conditions she must strictly adhere to. I made it clear that any slightest mistake from her, and I'd show her the door again, this time for good. Julia agreed to everything, and in her eyes, I saw complete remorse for her past actions and a readiness to take the right path. And though I couldn't forget that she was not only an alcoholic but also unfaithful, I primarily thought about my daughter. That's why I agreed to give her a second chance. We arrived home. She noticed the bird feeder in front of the entrance, where Chance the pigeon had already made a new friend and was cooing sweetly, but she didn't say anything and just followed me. Inside, she looked around as if it were her first time here, even though nothing had changed. "What's this?" she asked, noticing the cat lying on the couch. The cat woke up upon hearing us and started stretching its paws. "This is called a cat," I answered somewhat sarcastically. "I can see it's a cat, but do you remember that it's Kelly's cat? You'll need to be patient with her. She loves her very much, but if you're not satisfied, the door is open." Julia looked down in embarrassment, as if she was willing to tolerate having a pet at home, just to come back. That's when I realized how strong her desire was, and that she was willing to compromise, even on that. I tossed her bag with a few things onto the chair and headed to the kitchen. I remembered there was a small amount of vodka and a couple of beer cans left there. I gathered it all in a bag and prepared to take it out to the trash. While I was getting ready, Stan called me back asking what I wanted. But I said I didn't need anything anymore, though I inquired about the cost of housing just in case and briefly explained why I needed that information. Julia overheard my conversation, and when I finished, she approached me. "Do you still doubt me?" she asked softly. "Have you forgotten what you did in the past?" "Yes, I wanted to set you up in a separate place, but you're already here. And if you mess up even once, I won't be so kind. Don't even hope that I'll help you in any way later. As I said, you'll leave this house and Kelly forever." Julia understood the seriousness of my words and simply nodded silently. Then I went out to take out the trash, and she, like a hostess, started rummaging through the cabinets and the fridge for supplies. When I came back from outside, I noticed several semi-prepared foods on the table, ready for future cooking, and Julia herself sat by the fridge eating a piece of yesterday's leftover pizza hungrily. Watching this scene, I saw in her the usual homeless person, and understood how far people can fall. Julia turned to me, still chewing as I walked in. With her mouth full, she said, "God, I was so hungry. The food they gave me at the hospital was just awful." Julia got up and I put a bag with jars of medicine on the table, which I had taken from the car while taking out the trash. "What's this?" she asked, swallowing a piece. "It's medicine. The doctor prescribed it for you. There's also an allergy remedy in there, so now you can breathe easily around the cat. And there's a prescription inside telling you what and when to take." Julia approached the table, took the bag, and without unpacking it, inspected everything through the transparent film. "When will Kelly be home?" she asked, placing the bag back in its place. "Later. She's at school right now. And one more thing. I've signed you up for Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. You need to attend those sessions." Again, Julia nodded in agreement. I left her and went to my office. I needed to attend to work. Later, I picked up Kelly from school, telling her on the way home that there was a surprise waiting for her. She bombarded me with questions, but I didn't give in. I can't describe in words the joy and surprise my daughter felt when she saw her mom back home. They ran towards each other and tightly embraced after such a long separation. 2 weeks passed and Julia tried to behave appropriately. While she was still unemployed, she took on all the household responsibilities. Initially, she didn't feel particularly well as her body fought the effects of intoxication, but her daughter's tender hugs helped her cope. As for me, I couldn't accept her again as a woman yet, and we slept in separate rooms all this time. But I held back my emotions and tried to support her as she earnestly tried to regain my trust. As her treatment progressed, I noticed that her mood improved significantly and she became more cheerful. Even her complexion improved, and then she came to me one day and told me that she had found something to do. It was not exactly a full-time job, but it paid her something and it distracted her a bit so that she did not feel the urge to drink again. This part-time job at the market was recommended to her by Sally Dodge, one of the AA members who also worked there. And I was even a little bit happy that she had decided not to sit in one place, but to move forward slowly. But one day, I came home and noticed that there was someone else in the house. There was a man's jacket hanging on the coat rack, and I could hear voices and light laughter coming from the kitchen. I wasn't expecting any of my relatives to arrive or any friends to visit, and I felt an unpleasant sensation. When I entered the kitchen, I saw a man who was unfamiliar to me seated at the table, and Julia was arranging food from bags near him. "Oh, Bruce, you're back so unexpectedly," she remarked to me. "Was I supposed to report to you?" I asked, "Who's that?" I pointed my hand at the man. "That's Sully. He helped me bring home all these groceries." She pointed to the bags. "Look, I was able to pick all of this stuff up. Some of it was starting to spoil and was going to be thrown away. But the owner lets his employees pick it up so there's less trash." Sally dodged, and the man stood up and held out his hand to me. But I did not shake in return, only looking him over from head to toe and realizing that I did not like his presence in the house. With a sullen expression on my face, I called Julia into the room and told her my opinion, at the same time telling her to put the stranger out of the house. She was embarrassed at first and tried to prove that he was just an acquaintance and that there was no shame in it. But I lightly slapped her and reminded her that her fate was in my hands. Julia was silent and went obediently into the kitchen. They whispered some more, and then I heard the front door slam. Julia came back into the room, where I had already taken a pose on the couch, and was preparing to open my laptop. "You shouldn't have done that," I told her. "I'll make it up to you." "You embarrass me." "I don't give a shit what he thinks," I interrupted her. "You're gonna bring every bum in here." "He's not a bum at all," Julia defended. "I told you we worked together." Nervously, I closed my laptop, got up, and walked over to her. I grabbed her neck and looked into her eyes, which were filled with fear. It was only then that I noticed she had put on makeup again, wore more attractive clothes that had been in her closet all this time, and even smelled the pleasant scent of her perfume. "Don't test me," I hissed. Julia looked at me innocently and put her hand on mine, whispering my name softly. I stared at her for a while longer, and then it was as if something in me had awakened. I felt a strong desire for this woman again. I wrapped my other arm around her and kissed her red, lipstick-covered lips hard and passionately. I felt her hands on my lower back, which slowly slid down. It was like a volcano of feelings and passion erupted inside me. I picked her up and threw her on the couch. That day I had sex with her for the first time in a long time. It was so fierce, it was like we were both possessed by a demon. Lying on the couch after the violent outburst, I put one arm around her, gently stroking her shoulder. She snuggled up to me like a little kitten that had been picked up off the street and taken in. We were both silent, just enjoying the sensation. I felt a little guilty in my mind for giving in to my emotions, but on the other hand, I liked it. And now I hoped that our relationship would make some sense again. As we lay like that, her cell phone on the table rang. I involuntarily reached out my hand as it was closer to me, and I looked at the screen where the message was still popping up. "All set?" Looking forward to meeting you. The sender was signed as Dodge. I found this message so bold and suspicious that I even sat up abruptly. What the fuck is this? What the fuck kind of love notes are these? Are you up to your old tricks again? I threw the phone at Julia. She was surprised at my reaction, not understanding why I was so instantly angry. Then she opened the message to read it and gave me an innocent look, like it was no big deal. Bruce, I don't know why he texted like that. I really don't. I swear I didn't do anything wrong. We were just getting ready to have a little party for the next group meeting. Maybe that's why he texted like that. Do you want me to call him right now in front of you and find out what's up? Julia tried to clarify the situation, but it was noticeable that her hands began to shake as she started dialing his number. Deep down, I wanted to believe that she was telling the truth and that the message was really harmless. But the feeling of jealousy and the fact that she had decided to betray me quietly again was only getting hotter. Stop it, I replied rudely, putting on my pants. So you're all dolled up for him? And yet I believed you. But I'm not guilty, almost cried Julia. She threw the phone aside and rushed toward me, but I backed away and she fell to the floor. Cunt, I said, my anger boiling over. You can pack your things. I wanted to hit her hard, but for some reason I held back and just left the house. That was the third part of the story, the conclusion of the story, in the next clip today. And now we have another fascinating story for you. Decades and 3 kids later and 5 young ones, and she pulls a fast one on me. I've busted my chops all these years, finally seeing the light of a debt-free life, and almost hitting retirement. She feeds me this line about some teaching gig in Arizona, played the good husband, drove her deceitful self to the airport for her return on Thursday. Then a buddy of mine in Sin City for some rodeo thing sends me a snap. There she is, gambling away with our family doctor. Christmas is around the corner, and I've been waiting to bond over a hunt with my boy and the grandkids. Now I'm torn, go ballistic, or keep my cool for the holidays. Part of me thinks maybe I should play dumb, pick her up and see what else I can dig up. But I'm not sure I have the stomach for it. But blowing this up would break the kids, and that's the last thing I want. And to think she was belting out hymns on Sunday and then flying off to get cozy with the doctor on Monday. I never once thought she was cheating in all the 40 years we've been together. Seriously, never even crossed my mind. The life I felt so safe in seems to be crumbling now. It's a good thing my folks aren't around to witness this mess. I might just hop on a flight tomorrow and track them down, though they'd probably be using different names. The crazy thing is my 2 brothers are gone and there's nobody I can confide in. Maybe a pastor could listen. Heck, she's likely fooling around with him to stay current. Big thanks to everyone for supporting me over the past few days. I received tons of messages wanting updates and got some solid advice too, which allowed me to vent when I'm pretending everything's fine. Here's how it's been going down. 1. I took some time off work, and I'm at my cabin. 2. My wife's sister picked her up from the airport on Thursday night. 3. I hired a lawyer and a private investigator that the lawyer suggested. 2. I haven't talked to my wife about those Vegas photos, and only my lawyers know about them. 5. She thinks I'm at the cabin to hunt this big buck I've been after for a couple of years, caught on my trail cameras. 6. We've chatted on the phone and texted like normal. Nothing suspicious. Meanwhile, I've started digging into her trip and her life. Every time we talk, it ends with "I love you," just like always. 7. I've been following my lawyer's advice regarding our financial situation. 8. The private investigator has already confirmed that she's been having an affair with a doctor for over a year. We'll find out the exact duration later on. 9. She didn't go to that conference in Arizona? Nope. She spent every single night she was away in Vegas. My plan is to confront her once the private investigator wraps up his investigation. We're betting they'll meet up since I'm out of town. I'm gonna give them plenty of chances to chat before I come back. I didn't know that most affairs happen in the 55 to 70 age group. I believed we had a rock-solid marriage. She seemed happy with where we were in life, and I truly thought she loved me the way I loved her wholeheartedly. I loved her with everything I had. It's all just so unbelievable. Each day, I'm discovering things I never even thought of. Right now, I just want to figure out how many years of my life have been built on lies, and why our life together wasn't enough. Why wasn't I enough? Why weren't our kids and grandkids enough? She's a stunning woman inside and out, or at least I used to think so. But now it's clear. I'm going to end things with a divorce. There's no way to make things right. I'm not exactly sure how far I'll go in taking action. I'm extremely angry at both of them. I intend to confront the doctor and his wife together. At this point, I cannot say for certain what my next steps will be. I believe I must take it one step at a time. My first move is to gather as much information as possible before they can coordinate their stories. He may just be the most recent in a line of others. Update 2. I am heading back home tonight. My mother-in-law is 84 and has been alone for 12 years after her husband passed away. This shocking revelation of infidelity will hit her hard. My wife has 3 married sisters who have all been in long-term relationships. They will all be coming to our place for Christmas tomorrow night. Every Christmas since my father-in-law passed away, I have been grilling steaks for them. Skipping it might make her suspicious. I considered faking an illness and staying here, but I decided to just go home. Not returning could jeopardize my plan to come back with my son and grandsons. I have not yet confronted her. We have talked a bit, but mostly through texts. I am fairly certain she has no idea at this point. I gave the private investigator a gate and house code. He brought an IT specialist and was able to access her computer while she was at work. Somehow he is now receiving her texts from iCloud. I am not in daily contact with the PI or the lawyer. I have no idea what information he has uncovered. I have a meeting scheduled with him and my attorney next Friday morning, a week from tomorrow. It is already difficult for me to contain my anger with what I know now. It seems like I am spending more than necessary on the PI. The lawyer wants me to continue gathering evidence until I confront her. I plan to obtain whatever he has next week and hopefully reduce the payments. I usually go to my cabin the week before and after Christmas. If I can hold off, she will not suspect anything until I return home. I am leaving again on Sunday, as my son and grandsons have a hunting trip planned the week before Christmas, as we do every year. I have not seen her in almost 2 weeks. I never imagined that the love I had for her could turn into such intense hatred and disdain. My plan is to wrap up the evidence I gather next Friday after Christmas lunch. We will be exchanging gifts with our children and grandchildren. I will make sure she opens hers last. I will ask her to share it with our children, and then I will take her phone and leave. Next on the list is the doctor's place. I will give the evidence to his wife and family. After that, I will initiate a divorce on the grounds of adultery. Thank you for providing me with the space to share my story in real time. It is the only way I can release my emotions at this point. Let's see what the community has to say. Update: I returned home from the cabin last Thursday evening. She was already there. I was exhausted from not getting any sleep, and our conversation was brief. On Friday night, we hosted a Christmas gathering at her place with her mom and 3 sisters. We managed to pull that off without raising suspicions. Saturday kept me out for most of the day, and after church on Sunday, I headed back to my camp. I met up with my son and oldest grandson there on Sunday night. We spent the whole week hunting, and now I'm back home tonight. Nothing is planned for tomorrow. Our kids and grandkids will go to church with us on Sunday, and then they'll swing by here for Christmas lunch and gifts. I've been keeping my emotions in check. Nobody suspected a thing, given the huge situation I'm in. Have you ever thought about how I'm going to reveal her secret affair? Well, I won't be confronting her on Christmas. I have a meeting with my lawyer on Tuesday morning. My plan is to gather all the evidence he and the investigator have collected, along with the divorce papers he's prepared. I want to get my son and 2 daughters to come over for a family meeting and drop the bomb about her affair on them, all while confronting her at the same time. I am planning on doing that on Tuesday night. I am not entirely sure yet about how I'll face the doctor and his wife, but my aim is to ruin his reputation and career using any means I can. I appreciate the support messages. Here's update number 4. We got through Christmas with my kids, grandkids, and in-laws. On Monday morning, I went to see my pastor and laid out the situation. He arranged a meeting with me and the partner's wife. We decided to tackle this on Monday night, making them write detailed letters about the affair. I didn't let my wife say anything. I told her I knew she was in Vegas and who she was with, and instructed her to write the detailed letter. If any contradictions popped up with the evidence I had, then reconciliation was out of the question. On Tuesday morning, I met with the lawyer, got evidence, and received legal advice. On Tuesday afternoon, I met with the affair partner's employer and demanded they fire him. That got done today. On Tuesday evening, my kids showed up and their mom told them about what she had done. They were in shock and hurting. My wife went back home with my daughter, and she's still there right now. I'm figuring out the best way to proceed. Reconciliation is not an option. Once I am sure about what to do with my marriage, I will decide how to deal with the affair partner. She came clean about everything and answered all the specific questions I asked in her letter. Thank you for the good wishes. Talking about the update, I will try to address your questions. 1. Did you ask her why? Yes, I did ask why. Her response was that she didn't really know why. She opened up to me and the kids, saying she felt like she was hooked on something. She recognized she was ruining her own life, but couldn't bring herself to stop. She confessed to our children, saying no child should ever face the disappointment or shame of their mother's immorality. They didn't deserve the disgrace of that kind of behavior. I won't repeat all the things she said to me, because I'm not sure how much of it matches up with her actions. She's shattered, full of regret and pleading for forgiveness from both me and the kids. She truly grasps the gravity of her actions. How did the kids react? One of them confronted her, and the other two agreed with the sentiment. They told her that facing death would have been easier than dealing with this situation. Do I still want to be married? Absolutely I do. That's why I never strayed from my commitment to my wife. Did I meet the affair partner's wife and inform her? Yes, we met twice and communicated through phone calls and texts multiple times. Am I planning on divorcing her? To be honest, I'm not sure about that. Have I tried therapy? Not at the moment. What I'm really looking for is for all of this to somehow disappear. If you happen to know someone who can magically make that happen, I'd give therapy a shot. I can tell you that every situation comes with its own unique mix of factors, personalities, and complications. The way forward is still uncertain. I would have handled this differently if it were a different phase of my life. It's so simple to figure things out when you're typing away at a keyboard. Some folks here act like they're experts, but their advice isn't all that practical. Some of the comments are made without really understanding the whole picture. The subtleties I'm grappling with have been a source of strength. Actually, there's one Redditor who's been a real goldmine of wisdom, knowledge, and encouragement. He's given me more help than I could ever properly thank him for. Funny how I've connected so deeply with an anonymous stranger. That's about all the questions I recall, but I'm gonna check out some subreddits for a bit, so feel free to ask whatever's on your mind. It's not like I've gotta spend quality time with my wife, she's not even here. Oh, by the way, you might wonder why she's at my daughter's instead of with her own family. Well, her dad passed away and her mom is 84. I didn't want her mom dealing with all this nonsense. She is at my baby daughter and her husband's home. They have no children yet. The chance of her turning any of my children against me does not exist, but that is especially true of this little Spitfire. She is 10 years younger than her sister and 12 years younger than her brother. She has spent more hours in a deer stand, bay, boat, office, and truck with me than we could even begin to count. She won't even let her say the true things that are bad about me, much less lies. Weekend update plans. I had a brother who was 14 years younger than me. He worked as a college professor and lived about 8.5 hours away from our hometown. Sadly, he passed away in a motorcycle accident back in 2017. He left behind a daughter, now 24, who is married and living in a different state from her mother. However, she has brought her new baby to visit her mother and in-laws. My sister-in-law has remained single since then. Last night, I called my sister-in-law to find out when my niece was heading back home. It turns out she is spending the week with her husband's parents, who live about 40 minutes from my sister-in-law. My kids are crowding me, so I have decided to hit the road. I am off on a road trip to meet my great-nephew, who is actually named after both my brother and me. I will be arriving late tonight. I asked her to book me a hotel room, but she replied, "No way in hell that's happening. You're staying here and we're going to watch movies and munch on ice cream. I'm not sure when I will be back." As for my wife, I have not talked to, seen, or contacted her since Tuesday night. I went ahead and blocked her number. I called my son and told him where I am headed. I also asked him to swing by the office and sort out leasing a rental property that the company owns. It is a house that tenants moved out of, and it has been completely fixed up with the intention of selling it. I told him to let his mother know to grab what she needs from our house and move into the rental. She will have to pay rent to my son, who will then pay my company. A new keypad will be installed on the gates and doors of my house next Wednesday, so she better get her stuff now. It is the right time to do it. Update: I had a good weekend. When I talked to my sister-in-law, I mentioned that I would be making the trip solo to see my niece and her new baby. She questioned why my wife was not coming, and I simply told her that there were some issues, and I would fill her in when I arrived. I arrived here around midnight, and she had just taken a fresh pound cake out of the oven. It was hands down the best thing I have had to eat in weeks. I shared all the details of my situation with her, and a tear or two welled up. As I laid it all out for her, I eventually broke down and cried. She offered a lot of support, and we shared a moment of tears together. She comforted my bruised ego, and I guess I felt somewhat better after our talk. I went to bed around 3 o'clock yesterday morning. When I woke up yesterday, she made bacon and eggs for breakfast. As I ate, she gave it to me straight. While I may call the shots back home, I do not run the show at her place. Then she laid out my plans for the day. I had a haircut scheduled at 1 o'clock, which I was due for even before all of this happened, so I went along with it. After the haircut, we went out to dinner. We were hitting up Dillard's to snag some clothes that actually fit me. I've shed over 30 pounds in the past 3 weeks. Last night, I was planning to tag along with her to a friend's place. They were having a bonfire and fireworks going on for a bit. Today, the plan was for me to go to church with her, and later she'd head over to visit her parents for supper. She's cooking, and her daughter and son-in-law are coming over to eat and hang out. Her son-in-law is setting up a deer hunting trip for me tomorrow. Hunting with dogs on an 8,000-acre timber lease he's part of. He's got the whole week off, and he mentioned I could stay and hunt as long as I wanted. Plus, she's taking care of my laundry and meals. I've never done this kind of hunting before, so I'm not sure what to expect. We agreed we won't talk about my issues again until I'm ready to head home. So I followed her lead. She came along with me to her regular salon. On the way there, she told me, "I'm gonna have some fun with you when I introduce you." She said she'd use my first and middle name. I was like, "What's that about?" She just laughed and said, "Just go with it. I'm gonna stir up some gossip among these folks. My middle name is my mom's maiden name." And that's how she introduced me to her hairstylist. While I got my haircut, the stylist asked where I was from, and I said Detroit. "No way your accent's gonna pass for Detroit," my sister-in-law said without missing a beat. He's a real logger. Our next stop was Dillard's. I haven't done any shopping in years. I ended up getting 3 new pairs of pants, 4 shirts, 2 sets of shoes, and a tie. Can you believe they charged me $75 for just a tie? And then there's that Hart Schaffner Marx suit. She told me it was the only kind of suit my brother would wear. I had no clue he was so picky about clothes. I grabbed a new belt too. The suit needed some adjustments, and she managed to convince them to do it while we waited. On the ride back, she mentioned I was going to be her partner at the church party. So that's what I did. She told me to give her a look like I'm eyeing up a new gun so they'd buy it. I went along with her, except for the party. I claimed I was from Atlanta, selling road graders, and had been married and divorced 4 times. At church this morning, we got there late and left early because she wasn't aiming to get zapped by lightning for fibbing in church. She sat real close to me, holding my hand, and we walked out together. I've been having a grand old time, looking like a character from Dumb and Dumber, alongside my 46-year-old sister-in-law. She's been cracking jokes the whole way, and I've genuinely laughed. I haven't done that in 3 weeks. Tomorrow is hunting day, and I might stick around until Wednesday, but I have to be back to work on Friday. I've chatted with my son a couple of times. He's of the opinion that they should try to get her some medical assistance. Apparently, she's not opening up much and mostly stays cooped up in her bedroom at my daughter's place. Her phone is often dead, and my son and other daughter talk to her through my youngest. The other woman in the affair, her partner's wife, sent her a super long text where she practically threw every insult at her except the kitchen sink. As for me, I haven't had any communication with my wife. She asked where I was, and she told my daughter that she knows I'll never be able to forgive her. She doesn't blame me for not forgiving my son either. According to my daughter, she looks like she's been through hell. I still don't see a clear path to patch things up between us, but I decided not to file for divorce until I'm absolutely certain. Some folks have suggested that I file for divorce and then backtrack if I change my mind, but that just feels like a massive waste of time, energy, and money. Once I make up my mind about divorce, that'll be it. No going back. I'm not planning on suing her or her partner unless I go for a divorce. If that's the route I take, then I'll go after him to help cover the costs of the settlement. Otherwise, I don't want his money. I've come to terms with the fact that this mess won't get sorted out soon, and life as I know it is forever changed. I started writing a journal today, figuring it would help to put my thoughts in order by jotting them down. Once again, a big thanks for your encouragement. It's been a real boost for me. Update, my wife is in the hospital now. Yesterday morning, my daughter took her to the ER. She was seriously dehydrated, and tests didn't look too good for her kidney function. She was acting a bit confused, so they got her set up within 4 hours, and they'll be redoing some lab work today. They've also put in an order for a psychological evaluation. She'll likely be stuck in the hospital for most of the week. My son got in touch with her sisters and gave them the heads up about her hospitalization. I told them I was out of town. As far as I know, her sisters and mom have no clue about her affair. This weekend, I'm planning on having a heart-to-heart with her mom and older sister. In hindsight, I should have probably done that this past Friday before I left town. So, Sparkplug, I'm still crashing at my sister-in-law's place. I went hunting yesterday, but it's raining today, so I decided against heading out this morning. Last night, we enjoyed fried steak, mashed potatoes and gravy, some homemade biscuits, and topped it all off with apple cobbler and ice cream. She's got a few things to do this morning, but she's already given me a heads up to be dressed when she gets back, ready for some wandering about, whatever that means. I told her rainy days are good for a couple of things, and I'm not feeling well. And I am not feeling sleepy. She responded that our children do not need both of their parents in the hospital due to dehydration, so I am going for a short walk. I suppose I am actually glad to be here. Talking to my friends or dealing with work does not really appeal to me right now. I have my laptop, my phone, and my trusted coworker who has been by my side for 25 years, so business is running smoothly, as usual. He is aware of the affair because he was the one who informed me about the trip to Vegas. Sharing my thoughts on Reddit has been a great help for me in sorting through everything. I understand if you are getting tired of my posts, though. I have started writing a journal so I can pour out my thoughts there. If you are finished with my story, thank you so much for all your messages. Many of them have really made me think and provided guidance. My mind is in a better place than it has been since I received that text from her and the affair partner, and a big part of that is because of you. Moving on to her sister, I gave her a call and told her about the affair and what led to my wife being in the hospital. She was shocked and kept apologizing and expressing sympathy for me. My mother-in-law is leaving tomorrow on a trip with 3 other widowed friends. They are all friends with my daughters and jokingly call themselves the BCH gang, or blue-haired hoes. They enjoy bus tours. She told me she did not plan on telling her about the affair or the psychiatric evaluation, just that my wife's condition was not serious enough for me to cut my trip short and come back home. It was not necessary for me to be there at the moment. She said my mother-in-law was very upset when they left my place. It seems I did not look like myself and seemed troubled. Her sisters are going to help out and support my daughters and daughter-in-law during my wife's hospital stay. One of them will take her home with them until she is well enough to be on her own at her house. I called my youngest and told her to stop by the office and pick up a check she can cash. It is for a card she can bring to her grandmother's place. I got a name stamp at the office that she can use to sign the card and slip in a note wishing her a great trip. Oh, and I made sure to tell her I love her too. So once again, Reddit came through and picked up on something I had not even thought about doing. Update on my wife's condition. Her kidney function is improving, but based on the psychiatric evaluation, she has had a psychotic break. She is confused about where she is, thinking we were in a car accident and that I am no longer here. She is very distressed. Apparently, my supposed funeral already took place without her. She is in tears, muttering things that no one can quite understand. Tonight, they transferred her to a specialized hospital for mental trauma cases. They believe she will be back to her normal self in a few days. For the next 10 days, she's not allowed any contact with anyone. My middle daughter is taking on the role of being the point of contact for afternoon updates until she can have visitors. What an unnecessary mess this whole situation has become. I am still at Sparky's place, and she set me up with a 9:30 a.m. appointment tomorrow to see a therapist. She used to visit one for a couple of years after my brother's tragic death. I headed up to grab a shower, and when I was getting back into my pajamas downstairs, I realized all my trusty white Fruit of the Loom boxers were nowhere to be found. They had been swapped out with boxer briefs from Duluth Trading Company. The waistband on each of them reads, "Go Buck Naked." These boxers come in red, black, neon blue, maroon, and different shades of gray. I asked her about it, and she said, the 60s called, they want those ugly drawers back. And she added that the boys need some room to breathe. Update, you can find my previous posts on my profile page. I returned home on Thursday night. I had appointments that morning with the psychologist my sister-in-law used when her husband, my brother, passed away. The meeting did not go well. To be fair to the counselor, I was not really up for it. And I was pretty angry at the time. Talking about the details of my wife's affair was really uncomfortable for me. I had to go to work on Friday for a meeting about a contract addendum. They needed my presence and signature on a modified agreement. On Friday afternoon, I met up with my kids to discuss their mother's situation. The clinic asked us to come up with a discharge plan to help with her treatment preparation. I stood my ground. She cannot come back home to live, so they should get her ready to move into a rental place. Today's update on her status showed some positive progress she made over the weekend. They are also planning sessions with her family as early as the end of this week. I told my kids I will not be joining any of those family sessions. I made it clear to them that her recovery is not my responsibility, and I will not be a part of it. They might not fully agree with my stance, but that is how I am handling it. I did agree not to file for divorce in the next 6 months. I went to church on Sunday and sat in our usual spot, the one we have occupied for almost 40 years. None of the affair partners' family showed up, and I did not bother asking my pastor about their status because, frankly, I do not care. This afternoon, I met with a psychologist recommended by my pastor. It was a worthwhile meeting. He is 74 years old and works part-time from an office behind his house. He laid out his goals for our sessions, and I agreed to follow each step he suggested. I find him likable and at ease with me. We settled on meeting every week. I have an appointment with the State Medical Board Examiner's Office investigator in a few days or weeks. Coming over to my office on Wednesday morning. This comes after a complaint from my attorney against the affair partner. I'll have to give a sworn deposition regarding the affair. Every step I'm taking due to her affair irks me. I don't think she's pretending a mental breakdown, but it's hard for me to feel sympathetic. I think you're pretty caught up now. Here's an update. I haven't posted lately because not much has unfolded. Let me sum it up briefly. My wife is still in treatment and has agreed to stay there for 30 days. She's improving, but my kids and I agree that she needs more in-house treatment. I haven't directly spoken to her since December 27th. She tapped into her retirement account to cover the expenses. Yet to sit down with my mother-in-law, she and her daughters visited my wife. I sent her a text that I'd talk when I'm ready. She's called a few times to check on me. She's sad but holding up. No update on the affair partner, but his house is up for sale. Don't know if they're apart or together. I've had 2 counseling sessions, and I'm kind of looking forward to the Monday meeting. It's been helpful. The affair gossip is spreading like wildfire. I still go to church and hold my head high, even though her actions are mortifying. My kids and grandkids are all right, keeping busy at work. Plus, managing my son's re-election campaign keeps me occupied. Lately, I'm noticing attractive women more than ever. Not sure if it's good or bad, just more noticeable. That covers it for the update. My wife left the hospital on Tuesday and headed to a rental property owned by my company. It's an old house but has undergone a complete renovation. I still haven't spoken to her since December 27th. She wrote 2 letters expressing remorse and seeking my forgiveness. I haven't replied, except telling my kids that I've read her letters, and we'll talk when I'm ready to discuss our past and future. We've had a housekeeper with my wife for over 20 years. With my daughter and the housekeeper's help, we've set up a comfortable place for my wife in my house. They've even bought new furniture for her, all ready for over a week. She's arranged for the housekeeper to be there daily as needed, providing a driver and company. Her sisters stay overnight as long as needed. We had dinner at my mother-in-law's on Tuesday and I shared my stance. She understood and supported me. My son says his grandma visited his mom last night and wasn't too sympathetic. It seems she was pretty upfront about my wife's betrayal. This was the first time they talked about it. Tomorrow I'm going to Sparky's, and I have concert tickets for Saturday. My wife and a friend were supposed to go, but her friend can't make it due to a prior commitment. I have to attend a coworker's funeral on Saturday. Tomorrow afternoon we will be taking a flight to North Carolina and returning on Sunday afternoon. I'm looking forward to this change of pace and hoping to find some enjoyment. Surprisingly, I am finding counseling to be beneficial, and I am genuinely looking forward to my weekly sessions. It's like organizing the different parts of my life into their own boxes.